Don Junker is a musician's musician and a teacher's teacher. Never craving the limelight, his goal has always been to make the music as good as possible. In his many roles, band leader, ensemble member, studio musician, or music teacher, he has an extraordinary skill for developing and highlighting excellence in his fellow musicians. In this program, Don discusses his career beginning with his high school days and shares some of his philosophy and methods for making good music better. Joining in the discussion are jazz musicians Marvin Reitz, Kathy Reitz, and Brennen Ernst.
My mother got me piano lessons at age 4 with a lady teacher, and so that was okay. She was a nice lady, and I didn't know anything, whether I liked it or not. And then as time went on, she got me, I guess, a couple other teachers. But my mother was a taskmaster, and because she taught piano, and she always wanted to be a good player, but she never was. She played cello, she played peck horn, which is like a French horn, and a cornet. And so at any rate, I'm going along with these piano lessons, and violin in the hand and then churning, and I hated it, and all of this stuff. So finally, my folks got a divorce, I guess, when I was about 11, and I said, yay, I'm away from this piano. No more piano. But my dad promised that I would stay with this little cornet that she had. So I fooled around in middle school and early high school. It was all just fun. It wasn't really too serious about much of it. The band wasn't good. I wasn't good and didn't really care. I was into football and just other stuff. But so then I switched schools, and I went to a different high school. And I actually had a counselor that came up to me and he says, you know, you're wasting a lot of talent. He says, I hear you can play, but you're not doing it. You're not in the orchestra. You're not in the band. I think the following year I decided, well, okay, I'll take up the band too. And so I happened to meet two people. And Terry Harrington wound up playing with Bob Florence. He went to California. And Peggy Lee and I'm thinking Terry Gibbs. They promised him, if you come to California, we'll make sure you get some work. And at any rate, very talented guy. And the other guy's name was Bill Prince. Bill Prince was an educator, went to Northern Florida. He wound up being a professor in Northern Florida. Bill was a great trumpet player at the time. That's all I knew, was that he was a terrific trumpet player as a high school kid. And he played all the high notes like Buddy Childers, and I'm going, holy cow, who is this guy? And so when he was trying to write charts for 5 horns, the ukulele's only got 4, so he's playing the ukulele and singing the 5th voice and writing all this stuff down. And so between Terry Harrington and Bill Prince, the two of them pushed each other all the way through high school. They were always one step of each other. Can't you do this? I just learned this. And so then they practice on their stuff together. So between the two of them, I mean, they just right up to the top. Bill Prince wound up being on the No Rad Band with Bobby Shue and a lot of kind of famous guys that had been on the No Rad Band. And I think he was on the No Rad Band as a tenor saxophone player. That was the job they had open for him, and that was everybody trying to beat the war and all that other business. One of the things I noticed when I'd go into orchestra rehearsal, the only thing going on in the auditorium at 7 o'clock in the morning before orchestra, Terry would be sitting in the middle of the stage, nothing on but the red lights, the exit lights. And he's sitting there with this clarinet playing all these tunes, wading right through the changes all by himself, no rhythm section, nothing, playing just like the changes are there the whole time. And then I hear him doing Cherokee, which was that was the master. If you could play Cherokee at about 8 beats a second, you're going to make it all right. They came to him with WJR had a morning breakfast show. It was like an Art Van Dam accordion player with the clarinet, and he was a great clarinet player, good jazz player on it. And this was before. Of course, his father was a stride piano player, so he got into Benny Goodman to begin with, which is a wonderful foundation for him to learn all those tunes and stuff like that, and going back and reading, and so he wound up being a wonderful saxophone player as well. And doubler when he's out in California doing all the doubles and the whole business when he went out there. And so it really, these are the people that influenced me back then, and I'll never forget that. I mean, they even later in years and stuff, we would talk about various things. The musicianship of those two guys they were my mentors, and I still consider them my mentors.
How much older than you were they?
We're about same age. Yeah, I was just a dummy, and I wasn't really. I was into. Before I got into jazz, my trumpet teacher he introduced me to Billy Butterfield, and some of the older Bobby Hackett stuff like that. That's where I was. And then he had a music store, and some guy said, "Well, we're looking for a trumpet player. There's a polka accordion player looking for a trumpet player." So okay, I go to this rehearsal, and there's a guy with a baritone saxophone, accordion, and me. This is the band in the rehearsal, and this guy has written down a couple of Stan Kenton things with these high parts in them for the trumpet, and I'm going, wow, this guy is really strange, But we wound up being great friends, and he was another mentor to me, but probably not quite. He wasn't quite the player that they were, but we had a quintet, and this is still in high school, and we were taking Charlie Parker things off the record, and which is very difficult rhythmically to copy the way Charlie played. And so it did us a lot of good to push that and say, well, now we're going to call Bill and Terry over, see if they can play this stuff. Man, they would come over and rattle that stuff off like they've been playing for 1,000 years. We have to go back to the woodshed and get something else they can't play. But I think it always, one thing it's taught me is always try and put the level up higher. Now, this doesn't have to be to the point where it's higher, it's so high it's ridiculous, but you want to kind of move it. Even the albums, my albums that I recorded, I had solos for people that they weren't going to walk in and play. They were going to have to spend some time on it in order to play something and come out of it musically and to cover it correctly. And I think it's always worked for me, and I think even now with the band I'm conducting over in Virginia, I don't give them a lot of slack on stuff. If there are certain things, if they repeat it, if they make the same mistake twice, I'll stop. Say the reason I stop is because you did the same thing twice. It'll go by, and I don't want to get on everybody's butt because of this or that. But they obviously didn't pick up the reason.
No.
So they did that, and so these are values that I've learned. I was in the military. Had a band full of 18-year-olds, 18, 19. They got their little personal problems with the girlfriends and drinking and all this other stuff, and they were terrible players when they came out there. But when I finally got a chance to be the band leader, I put it to them in such a way, I says, when payday is, when chow call is, you're going to know how to play that horn if you're going to pick up that paycheck, or you're going to be miserable. And once they realized I wasn't backing down, and there was no political pull that they were going to have on me with that, I took them out, and we finally did a Navy ball gig with it. They'd been bringing in Petula Clark brought in a band out of Tokyo, professional big band.
Was this playing jazz music with these guys?
I was trying to introduce it. These were the charts that the band had.
Okay.
We did a little combo stuff. We had to go play at the officers' mess for dinner, and I would take individual players and give them some experience doing that. And so that's the whole thing, is give people a chance to do things, but you encourage as it's going along in the right direction. A lot of tunes are very kind of simple tunes, There's not an awful lot of imagination has to go into that, but if all of a sudden the chords are like, now how do you play the right notes in these? What scales are they? And I make them find the scales. Get your horn out and go through it. Nope, wrong note. Keep going until you find out the notes that are in that scale. And every chord has a scale, theoretically, or more than one scale. Obviously, many more than some of them that you can do. And some of the young stuff that's out there today that I hear these young people doing coming out of North Texas and some of these schools, And they teach each other. That's how I found it. I listened to all these guys that came out of North Texas and said, where'd you learn that stuff? And he said, well, another saxophone player at school already had that scale. And they'd be in a room practicing this scale and playing it. And about 12 tenor players are right outside the door doing one of these, and they'd run down to their room, and try to play and remember it. So there's a lot of, that's the beautiful thing about music, you learn from each other. And you can't be too proud. And you have to be, it could be so much fun. When I was in the Navy, they gave me the trio gig for my last year, but they wouldn't give me a bass player. So the bass player they gave me worked in the office on the typewriter, but he had played in the fleet aboard a ship. And I'm trying to play Bill Evans with a, well, I need that from the bass player. I don't need, that would be putting the third in the bass. I want the root or the fifth or something that's going to anchor what I'm doing. Like I say, it can be annoying sometimes if things aren't there. The thing that annoys me more than anything is that people don't care. They're doing something and it doesn't bother. And I had a band full of them when I was aboard ship. And when you're in Vietnam at 9,000 miles away, and they give a guy orders over there, they don't really want to spend that money to bring him back if he's not cutting the mustard. So you do a lot of teaching. And for the trumpet players, the only place I had to teach them was like a telephone booth. What it was the development room for the photogs. And a little room about the size of a telephone booth to try and teach these guys chops, what's supposed to happen to play. And I eventually did, but it takes so much time.
So do you think that their attitude was as well, I'm on this ship in the Navy and I'm in the band, which is a better deal than some other places I could be in a war. And so they didn't really care about the music so much, that they just thought they were in a safer place? Or what? Why?
My job is to make men out of people as well as teaching. It's not only just teaching them the music, but it's the idea if you're going to take the money or you make the contract. A lot of people today, unfortunately, they can't. There's no draft. So kids can go into service and act up and get out. As simple as that. In the old days, you go out and act up, they can put you right on the front lines with the Marines, dodging bullets. The thing that they had to mention to him, the guy says, well, I think I can't act it, I'm going to get out. Say, good, you're in 1A once you leave. Your status is 1A, so you go right on the front line. So, well, maybe I can deal with this a little bit better. So it teaches people to deal with reality, and that you can't always be a lizard and slide out of whatever you don't like. There's a lot of things in this world that you're going to see throughout your life that are going to be desirable, but you still have to dig in and say, we got to get through this somehow. And if you can teach people to do that and respect themselves for doing it, that's the other thing. I mean, a lot of those guys hated me. They hated me. When I first took the band, the first gig I did, the band stopped. I did a real easy Sammy Nestico chart, and the band fell apart and stopped. I mean, I took easier stuff earlier in the gig, and now there's only about 6 people left on the dance floor. Everybody's gone home, drunk and having a good time. And I said, let me see what I got here in this band, because we had just gotten half a band of new guys from the school of music, and they came in. And it stopped, and they were laughing. They thought that was fun. I said, well, enjoy your laugh, because Monday is coming. And the Geedunk starts at 8 o'clock, but some of you aren't going to be at the Geedunk. You're going to be in my office with your horn. Oh, I don't play solos. I says, you do now. And so from that, I dragged out the music. We went in the library, and we must have dragged out just about everything they had in there, top to bottom. Next chart, top to bottom, top to bottom. And I get this, Chief, how long are we going to be here today? It's 4:30 now. I said, you don't sound much better right now than you did when you got here at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it finally got a couple of weeks later, I grabbed one of the kids and says, go down and get us a case of beer. Now we're going to try and see if we can make it swing. We had a guitar player, an engineer on the boat, who would rather be, he went to a Naval Academy. He says, I would rather be in the band, be chief of the band, than an ensign down in the hole on the ship where it's nice and hot as an engineer. And he says, I'd swap that in a minute. But when he did his time on the ship, he got off and he was like what they call a public relations guy on the base. So he was the one who made the contact about why don't we use the ship band? He says, they're pretty good. So they talked him into doing that. So the two Japanese singers, ladies, and one of them came up, brought her book and stuff. And this was during the days of Backrack with the funny time signatures, playing at 7/5, 4/3, various other tunes. So the prima donna comes up, and she says, "Get up this." And the kids in the band looked at me and said, "We didn't rehearse this." I says, "You don't have to. You can read it." And they did. And the warrant officer said to me, he says, "Thank God you taught those kids how to read." So that's the old story of have your toolbox loaded. Make sure it's ready. You get the opportunity. There it is, man. That can be the beginning of some really good things.
Next, Don talks about rearranging standards to bring out the best in soloists and accompanists by providing interesting and challenging variations.
I don't change things for sake of change, usually, unless I see something that I can enhance it and make it neater. To me, I'd rather make the musicians happier than the people. The people they haven't got the slightest idea what those changes are that I made, but the musicians will go, "Wait a minute, that's neat."
So would you say that the chords that you choose to reharmonize, they have to support the melody so that the people can, the audience can recognize the tune, but you want to reharmonize it to make it interesting for the musicians?
Exactly. That's like the Tonight Show when Doc Severinsen had it. They did all the old standards, but they made those little changes in there that made it newer. It didn't sound like the dead Glenn Miller. Everybody's playing da 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 da. You know, there was a lot of life to this stuff, and of course Johnny Carson didn't give much time to play anyway, so they're playing all these up-tempo swinging things. Sorry you asked.
That's really neat. So where all those diminished chords were coming up, you had some really cool things going on. And it's neat what you can do with just putting a triad over an unusual bass note. You get a lot of harmony out of that.
It's the dissonance that you're creating so that when the consonant comes, it's like, how did you get out of this?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the fun of writing that stuff like that, putting it somewhere where it's not apparent. Everything is not apparent. I was the lead trumpet player in the big band in Maryland. You know, I wanted to play in the band. I mentioned it to him after he got there. Rick Henderson had been there before that. And I says, you need a trumpet player. Like, no, we got enough trumpet players. Okay. Well, I think about 6 months later, the lead trumpet player was doing cocaine and rolled his car off and cut his lip from here to here. And he came to go, "Hey man, I have to ask you, would you play some lead? We're trying to recruit here. We're going down to Southern Maryland and on a school bus, and we need somebody who can play the lead stuff." And they had some good saxophone players in that band. And so I wound up playing on the band, I think, for a couple of years, playing lead on it for them. And but Archie Shepp came out and played. And we played Giant Steps, and then Archie did a quartet by himself with just a small thing. And I heard him play, and I said, "That's really unique because it sounds like everything he's playing the changes out in front of the changes. So if the chord is a or an A minor, he's already playing on the D. So and he was doing that back then, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. I don't consider myself extra hip at all, but I've learned a couple of little scales that'll help people sound a little hipper than they would. And it's interesting just to sit down and just make yourself find things to play. Terry Harrington had a book out, and it's already out of publication. You can't get it anymore. But he's talking about polychords and all kinds of different things in there that superimpose things and what have you. My second album, actually, the first tune is written by Guy Eastman. And he's got the poly stuff going right on the first tune, and there you're going.
What's a polychord?
What? It could be like a... If you want to call it that, it doesn't necessarily sound good, but theoretically. How about... So it's an A on top of a G, if you're thinking of it that way. I got into Billy Childs many years ago. I went to a rehearsal in a small group that I played in Baltimore, Bob Fields. Bob Fields went to Peabody with Tommy Newsom. They're in the same class. I'm down there warming up one night and getting ready for the rehearsal, and Bob says, "Hey, come on upstairs. I got somebody I want you to meet." So I go up there, and he and Tommy had been sipping wine all afternoon. All right, Tommy. But I got him to write a chart for my big band. So that was my connection to Tommy Newsom. And so, things happen that can help you here in just meeting these people that have their stuff together. And
so when you met these people and they were mentors to you, you felt that you were picking their brains all the time. Is that what would you say is your chief way you learned how to be an accomplished musician? But you didn't go to music school, right?
No. The only school I had was high school theory, secondary down. I said that was it.
So do you think if you had gone to music school, it would have hurt you?
Oh no, I don't think so. But I hated school of any kind. I just wasn't into it. I hated high school. I used to cut classes and go practice. Stuff like that. I mean, they threw me out of high school and they said, "Don't you come back no more. Here's your friggin' diploma." And but that's. I guess it was a pretty good school, and the teachers were meaning well. We had an 80-year-old English teacher, and she was easy to cut classes on. She's let half the class go to the library one day, and the other half would go the next day. So I would just work my way in that line and being the one that was going down the hall, and I would go to the band room and practice. So I had that figured out until the counselor caught me. Somebody else cut class, and when they counted heads, let's find out who's not here. And so the counselor says to me, he says, "Jumper," he says, "you're taking advantage of a poor 80-year-old lady." He says, "I hear you doing that anymore." He says, "You're going to need a flashlight to get home." Like I say, I consider myself very fortunate to have met many different people in different circumstances, and played on this band up in Lakewood. It's called Lakewood Jazz. If you get the time to look it up on the computer, they've got many concerts. And I got Bill Watrous. I got him to be with Wayne Bergeron. Got Wayne Bergeron to be the specialist. Carl Saunders. I got Carl on that gig up there, where they were the guest soloists for the thing, and they were adjudication high school bands. But they put together a pro band of guys out of Atlantic City, Philly, and New York. And the guy that's presently the lead trumpet player at the Vanguard is Nick Marcione. Nick was in that band. He was just a kid. I remember when he was in the 8th grade, he was 350 pounds and played like a pro in the 8th grade. But his father went to Curtis, which didn't hurt in terms of his education coming up and what have you. So he's a terrific musician. So he's in New York doing very well doing. He was on the producers from the time it started till the time it finished.
What was it like playing in basically pickup bands when famous people would come through here?
You just do your job. The music is there. Usually you got a rehearsal. And that's where you iron out the kinks, little pencil marks here and there in the rehearsal to watch for things. Some of the harder things, I think, were the shows that have been played so many times and the parts marked up and not erased. And where things went back and repeated, and this time we're doing it this way, and this time we're doing it that. that can get to be a little hair-raising. I noticed with like Aretha Franklin and some of the other black shows and stuff that I did, I'm glad that there were all brothers in the band, because I'm going to read the music. And if they're pulling that stuff, the brothers know the words to the tunes. I'm from Detroit, and I never got into Motown at all. My trumpet teacher says, whole notes and half notes ain't going to do much for you. But I did find with Gladys Knight and the Pips, that was not the case. I mean, they had some difficult technical stuff, and they had stuff they wanted me to play up an octave and all this other stuff. Once they learned I could do it, the conductor says, see that over there? Play that up an octave. See that over there? Play that up an octave. And but to begin with, he had burned out Jim Howard, who was my idol, basically. This black trumpet player was a great player. But he had a real long rehearsal, and he had just taken over as leader, and he was out to prove he was leader. And so he kept running things over and dragging everybody out. This was for a Congressional Black Caucus gig. And Bill Cosby was right here behind a screen. I could have done that and pushed him in the back or out from where I was sitting on this thing. But that was the first big one that I did, because we just rehearsed with a cowbell. The rhythm section isn't even there. They're just trying to put all the horns and stuff together, doing that. But we had harp, we had white shoes, white tuxedos, the whole business. And one of the funny things with it, and this was at the Hinckley Hilton Hotel down, and so we'd been rehearsing all afternoon, and finally Jim Howard starts feet on, and missing notes here and there. And I'm thinking, man, this conductor is something else, man, this guy, And it wasn't long after that, maybe within that year, the contractor, we were doing a high school, black kids high school, dance in the spring, and we're playing the gig, and the other trumpet player was supposed to be splitting lead with me, and he had lip trouble that night, so I wound up playing the whole thing. So Clarence comes up to me and said, how'd you like to go on the road with Gladys Knight? I says, oh, yeah, it'd be nice. When? He says, 8 o'clock bus tomorrow. So then I get out there, and there's two brothers that are playing the other trumpet books. And I said, I'm not going to take that lead book. I saw what that conductor did to Jim Howard. I said, I'm going to take I'm going to take an extra P in there and let them get on the stage and grab all the music and stuff. I'm going to be smart. And so I'm taking my time, and somebody comes up and says, you better get on the stage, they're ready to start. So I go out there, guess what seat's wide open? The one in the middle, And I said, oh boy, here we go. And so I had to tell them, they were playing out of tune and stuff. And I said, pull the tuning slide out. I says, it's sharp. And I said, we're going to get fired. The whole band probably get fired. And they were, well, pulled it out about that much. I said, no, almost a quarter of an inch, pull it out. And these are guys that have been doing those shows, for years and stuff. And but with this guy, I figured he's going to know, and you're going to be in trouble. And the other thing is, when you're playing that, don't let it all hang out. Don't be playing rehearsals for sound. So we had 4-hour rehearsal and 2 shows back to back in Augusta, which is where she grew up. And the golf tournament was going on. And I'm thinking, holy cow. So, I mean, for lead trumpet book, and she had some high stuff in there. But the funny thing that she did, or that the conductor had done, they'd whited out the original high notes and put lower ones because of, when they're traveling, you come to a small town here, the competency is only at a certain level, So I think they were trying to play it safe. So what I would do in the rehearsal, I would play what they reduced it to. And on the concert, I would put what the original stuff was, and the conductor would do one of those. He said, "Oh yeah, I remember." So, but that got to be a little game that was kind of fun to do. But we did it for like. So
this was a road band that was a consistent band, but sometimes prior to that, they would have a pickup band in whatever town they were.
Oh
in.
yeah, I mean the only time we were on the road was in certain cities that the union wasn't strong enough to keep us from. Because the big cities are going to say, no, we got people right here that can play this, and you're not coming in and doing that. So the thing is, when you go in there, they already know what the situation is. It's just like one night we were in Alabama, and Gladys Knight was tearing it up. Everybody liked the music. Oh, more music, more. So she's on the stage ready to go. And the union stage music, there goes the lights, the mics, everything. You guys are done. I don't know, you look at a lot of these things. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being with the black guys. They were a lot of fun. And we just kidded the dickens out of each other the whole time. And the Redskin Band, when I was on that, I got all the high trumpet solos. When the football players were laying on the ground and the doctors are out there, well, you going to get up or we going to carry you off one of these, man? And I'm playing and playing and playing and playing. Come on, get up, I'm getting tired here. And the reason that they wanted me to play all the solos is because the tenor and the trombone do not carry over the crowd when the band is playing. They get buried. So that was the reason that they had me doing that. So I did that for like 10 years out there. Again, that was the question is, if you got the gun that's loaded, the Gladys Knight shows, I did well and all that. So they knew, and I was readily accepted and everything else. And that has a lot to do with it, being ready for whatever is in there.
When did you pick up bass? You talked about playing piano, taking lessons when you were a kid, and then picking up cornet soon after that when your parents split. But when did you pick up bass?
My mother mentioned that. She said, "Why don't you learn the bass?" I said, "I don't want to do that." And then finally, as later teenage years came up, there was a girl bass player who had an old K bass, and she wanted to sell it. And so my mom says, "Well, Grandma, I'll loan you $110 to buy that bass. Why don't you get that?" So I got it. I was playing gigs like with polka band, and back then there was no amplification, stuff like this. So the first thing I did, I took up one of the basses from school. We had these metal basses. They were aluminum, painted brown.
Vince Giordano plays one.
And then you were up on the third floor is where the storage room for the string instruments were. And so the lady orchestra conductor, she was a jock. I mean, she could squeeze your arm and you said, "Let go." And so she made the guys in the orchestra carry the basses for the girls. We had 6 girl basses. So I decided, well, I need a gig. I'd like to take this bass on this gig. And I was just going on the G string, just nothing, But it sounded better just having that boom, boom, boom.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And so at any rate, I took the bass out, and then when I had a chance to buy this one, I figured, okay, yeah, that'd be a better idea. So I bought that. And then you start going on gigs, and you start getting used to playing notes and learning things sound better when you do. And the old fake books back then didn't really have any good chords in them, anything very good.
They still don't.
Really horrible. But I mean, the ones today are pretty good compared to what those were. And but at any rate, the first thing you learn to do when you got into wherever you're going to play is see if you can find a wall to stand in front of to help get the sound out. You'd come home and your fingers would be bleeding, you got blisters, and the whole business just trying to be able to hear yourself. And but that was the first band with a saxophone player, and then we'd play on the bride's porch at crack of dawn, and we playing a lot of the Pogorsky books.
And this is in high school?
Oh yeah. So I'd make $100 in one day. I was working in a grocery store as a stock boy, making 70 cents an hour. And on a Saturday, I'm making $100. I'm playing first thing in the morning. We would go over to the hall, usually connected with the Catholic Church. And so we'd set up the music and stuff and whatever you're going to do. But the kegs were already tapped. So here we are at 11 o'clock, drinking out of the kegs. That's going. Now the groom comes in, puts a fifth underneath the stand.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're working on both of them. So now, okay, we're done with just the early part of this wedding. And okay, so 1, 2 o'clock, it's time to go home and then come back for 8 o'clock gig at night, the regular gig at night. And man, I remember closing one eye, man, just so that the police wouldn't see me. If they were coming up here, man, I kept that eye open and this one closed. But I was seeing double and everything else trying to drive back home. I had this little Chevy coupe, and I'd go home. And fortunately, my mother wouldn't be home; she'd be teaching or something. She didn't see me come in, and I'd get up, go play the gig at night, get just as stoned again at night. And same bit, but I made $100 for the day, and I'm thinking, man, that's pretty damn good for high school. And I started my own quintet. Like I said, we were playing Charlie Parker tunes and various other very challenging stuff for high school kids. The other thing that helped me learn tunes was that I worked as a stock boy. They had a loop on the music system. And every day I would hear these tunes. I never knew the names of them. They never said anything, but this music was going. So I would start getting on gigs with old timers, and they say, you know this? And I'd say, well, no, well, you wait, we'll play it and then see if you... And sure enough, man, I knew the tune. I just didn't know the name of it. But that's how I learned a lot of the tunes, just repetition, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, that way. So that was a good way. And then the other thing that I started to learn was that a lot of tunes have the same sequences. And so therefore, if you know this tune, you probably know most of that one. That the only thing you might learn is a couple of places where they made the difference. And so that gives you a lot more tunes in your reservoir there.
Absolutely.
So doing stuff that way. So that helped a lot. And that's how I got the trio piano gig. Not that I was a great pianist.
But you knew a lot of tunes.
But I knew a lot of tunes without repeating them.
Yeah.
And most of the gigs in the Navy are people are out there drinking and talking, and they really don't. They just want to know somebody's working.
Right.
They can care less what you're playing, how you're playing, or anything else. And but it was good for me to be playing the piano that much, because I'd been running the rock band right before it. I ran the first Navy rock band, and it was a 6-horn band. It was Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Chicago style. A lot of fun with that. And I was the lead trumpet player on that, chief in charge of it, and what have you.
Don's still at it and going strong. Let's see what he's up to nowadays.
The only thing I'm doing right now, I've had dental problems, so I've had to try and find a new place on my face for the mouthpiece to vibrate and everything else. And I keep it up there by the TV. At 87 years old, I don't really know whether it's going to come back. The problem is, I've created my own monster with what I did before. Now everybody expects you able to do that, and that ain't the case. It ain't the case, particularly if you have dental problems. And so, at any rate, I've been playing that. I have a little quintet or quartet that comes in here once a week usually. And we play, and we have some Billy Child's tunes. And Billy is just a wonderful writer, composer, and he is currently, who's the trumpet? Chris Bodie is the trumpet player, and he is his conductor and what have you, piano player. And he was Freddie Hubbard's piano player before, Billy Child's. So I have the utmost respect for him. I have his music right here. I'm still trying to play it. But you want to talk about growth and stimulating and what have you. It's something that you're not going to walk in and play. And he's a very humble man, as terrific a player. He's got a number of albums out and what have you, and I have a few of them anyway. And so that's inspired me to just do what I'm doing, and I'm just rehearsing. I'm the rehearsal conductor of this band on Saturdays, with full big band. And we've got saxophone players that show up every week, and sub-saxophone players that can all play.
So the Saturday band is the difficult run band,
Right.
and you've been involved in that for
Quite a while. Yeah, I
I
played the second trumpet in it. The original trumpet player is still there. I explain things that cause pitch to be bad. I make them aware of their horn, what they should be looking on their horn. If you're going to go in a recording studio and you're screwing up a lot and playing out of tune, it's going to cost a little more money in it. You're going to be in that studio a lot longer. So why not learn these things about yourself first, so that you know when you go to any situation exactly, the things that you may be weak in, but at least you're aware of it, and you're going to work on it a little harder doing that. But I don't take any prisoners in that band. I really don't. And there's some pretty good players, and more school than me in my band here. I mean, I had people with doctorates and masters and all kinds of stuff in there. But it's still my band, and I'm running it with these. I'm not running it with all the paperwork that these guys learned. I try and give everybody a chance. That's what rehearsals are about. I mean, you're in there. And I might say something, okay, you're close here on this. You need to work on this or that. And I'm here. If you want to come over and bring your stuff, we'll spend a little time.
How did you learn to tune pianos?
Unfortunately, I started with a guy that my father-in-law broke a string, had an upright, broke a string, and so he just got in the phone book and looked up somebody. I think The guy's first name was Albert, so the A was the first one in there. So he comes over, and so then he said he had a machine and all this, and so he was saying, yeah, come on over, I'll teach you. He didn't teach me crap. Every time I asked him something, he didn't know what I was talking about. So finally, it didn't take me very long. There's another guy in the band, a very dear friend, who had been tuning a little bit by ear, and I said, what do you say we go to the guild meetings and find out what's going on with the piano technicians guild? So you go in there and you hear all these old timers just talking about this or that and stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's the road. And what it was, they would teach you. You could go over there. They wouldn't let you do stuff because you didn't know how to do it right to begin with. But you could watch, and then you get yourself a piece of junk that you can work on at home and practice your stuff there. And there's books to teach you how to tune, very good ones. John Travis's book was great. I don't know if there's still any more around or not, but they might have run out of publication. His son Michael is not doing very well. He did the Montgomery County piano, at least the college pianos for years. I did the University of Maryland pianos for 6 years.
How old were you when you started tuning pianos?
I would say about 26,
Okay.
or something like that. I mean, you start, and the main thing is you have to have a desire to ask questions and realize you're going to make mistakes. You are.
Let's hear Don and Brennen jam on a couple of standards. Thanks for joining us. Please comment, like, subscribe if you enjoyed the show. Thank you.